Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Catherine Wygant Fawcett, the Executive Director of the Institute for Family-Owned Business, otherwise known as IFOB. We're so excited to be here with you, and this is our new kind of funky little space that we have. We have another training room down the hallway, but Barry Dunn is using their facility for that. So we're in here today, so thank you. We'd like to thank Seth Weather and Barry Dunn and Tina Gray and Pamela and Brett for helping us and giving us this nice high-tech space. Welcome to you all on Zoom. Are they seeing us and being in? Brooke's our tech person, so we're recording the program for later viewing, and we'll send out the slides too that they're going to have for your review. So we're testing this concept a little bit with our cameras and things, so please bear with us as we go along with this. We have Brooke here from Brooke Stewart, so our Director of Communications. So she's here to help with anything that you guys might need and be our tech person. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Mascoma Bank, for sponsoring us today. And in a few minutes, I'll invite Todd Batchelor, Senior VP Main Market Manager from Mascoma, to say a few words. Here at the IFOB, we promote, support, and champion the success of family-owned businesses, the backbone of our economy, with education, networking, and other services. And we just coined that for our board retreat in April, and we have our new fancy little brochure that we have. So if anybody's interested, talks about who we are and our awards, and actually Peter's in here as the environmental leadership winner last year. And then we have our big, beautiful awards book here as well. So thank you. This year, we're offering over 60 programs, and some of you have seen my famous little hierarchy chart. It tells you all where to come, what to do, and when things are happening. So we have those there. And for you all on remote, we will be sending that in our follow-up email. You can always check out our website, fambusiness.org, for full details. These programs are for all your employees. So anybody who's a member of the Institute, it's like Doritos, munch all you want. You're welcome to come. We'd love to have you. So spread the word. And next Thursday, May 19th, who here has any challenges with time management? No hands? Nobody has any problems with time management? Okay, anybody have any challenges maybe with positivity in the world today?
Okay, positivity.
Okay, so, well, this is not a Zoom program. This is an in-person program from 4 to 6 next Thursday with Loveland, May 19th. And we'll have a little hors d'oeuvres, and then we're going to have a lot of fun. And any of your employees, anybody you'd like to come, even if you want to bring a guest, just let me know. We'll comp them and come join us. That's coming up. And then on June 2nd, we have a husband and wife team, Melinda Gagnon and Brian Gagnon, and they came from high-tech. They were from Maine. They went out to California. They did their high-tech world, and then they came back to Maine. So we have a new series that we're calling Navigating the Remote World. And so they're going to be talking about what technology and things you can use in your own company and how they scaled from big tech down to their size. And then some of the potential challenges that you might have with a husband and wife team running a family business, and the successes. So they're going to be that, and that's going to be on Zoom. That's June 2nd. Let me see, I have a lot of things to go over here. Nominations, I talked about those. Behind the food, we have a QR code for a cute little thing or you can just go onto our website or sign up for family businesses to nominate them. They don't need to be members of the Institute to be nominated. If you nominate them, they will know that you nominated and recognize their excellence. And we had like 166 nominations last year. Then we narrowed it to 40 semifinalists. If they complete the application and they're not members, they get a complimentary membership to the Institute with all our programs. And then they learn a lot about their company, filling out the application. And then they also, if they get through to the finalists, then they get written up in this book and promotion. And then it's live like the Oscars. So what was it like not knowing and then finding out?
It was amazing.
was amazing. There we go.
Like the Oscars.
So love to have you all come for that. So that's October 12th. And we have Tony Simmons, the 5th generation retired CEO of Tabasco sauce, who's going to come. He's never been to Maine. He's got family. So we're spicing it up at the Holiday Inn. And we're going to have Amanda Hill is going to be our host for that. So today we're kicking off our leadership, culture, and growth in our how-to series. We have Michelle Wyman and Steve Musica here from Room East. And we have Peter Horch from Horch Roofing and Lilly Mullen from Springer Jewelers. Towards the end of the program, as we would really love to have you fill out our survey. We put it at everybody's desk. This is how we plan and get our program each year organized. People on Zoom will be sending that to you. The feedback is really helpful to us. So now I'll turn it over to Todd.
Thank you, Catherine. And just a few quick words. We're very pleased to be sponsoring this event today, and it's nice to be a part or play a small part in all the good educational work that you're doing every year. So I want to make sure that I thank and acknowledge what Catherine and her team does to keep this part of the Maine economy vital and growing and prospering. As someone who thought he was a fully recovered banker a number of years ago, I spent nearly a decade with a couple of family businesses. I can appreciate all that many of you do to juggle, meet, try and in some cases, hopefully exceed some disparate expectations that family members and other stakeholders have in these businesses. So hats off to you. It's not an easy job. And again, thank you for all that you do to keep this group and, educated, vital, growing, prospering, et cetera. And certainly I guess last but not least, I want to thank today's panelists, Steve, Michelle, Peter, Lilly, for sharing their management insights and their management journeys. And with that, I guess just a real quick, for those of you who aren't familiar with Mascoma, we are about 100+ years old. It served New Hampshire and Vermont for much of the last century plus. A few years ago, opened a commercial loan office here in Portland. And I'm very excited to be over the last few quarters to be building out the team with Dave Carter, who's a private banker, and Amber Esperanza and Andrew Cook, who joined us as commercial lenders. So anyway, thanks again, and all looking forward to the program.
Awesome to you guys. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. I'll kick it off for the panel here. So welcome, everyone. It's a funky space. So I'm not sure. I think it's better to sit down at the board table, but I can also go over there. And I think, the idea of this is to be fairly laid back and really, Michelle and I are going to talk a few topics and then try to lob questions, just general questions over to Peter and Lilly about some of the things they've done. And I would say because of the setting and everything, just, keep it laid back and intimate. And if you guys have questions, just go ahead and raise your hand. And if you're online, I think Brooke's gonna be your hand and she'll ask the questions. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward, hopefully. So our group here, see if I can advance. There we go. So quick intros. Michelle, who is of course next to me, she's been working with the Leaney's team, our team, for how many years now? Six. Probably about 6 years. Michelle worked in this building years ago when it was Unum and has experience with Maine Yankee and General Dynamics, Bath Iron Works, and I guess also Martins Point, amongst others. She's an award-winning trainer and does a lot of the organizational development side of our, consulting business, and basically leads the leadership training component for our team. My background is really, I guess I'm a failed employee. So I would work places and really focus on improvement and fixing and making things better. And then I'd get bored and want to break something again, so I'd have something to do. And that's not the best as an employee, but it's not bad as a consultant who can come in and sort of work and get involved and help and then, move on and kind of get things straightened out. My background is engineering and engineering management, which has a lot of that leadership component. And then I got into Lean and Six Sigma. So, really Lean is just a lot of the Toyota production system methods, and Six Sigma is just fancy words for statistics and using data to make decisions. So that's really my background. And I started Lean East about 12 years ago and have slowly brought a few people in to help. So that's my background. Just a little speck on Lean East. The mission of our organization is to bring out the best in organizations by bringing out the best in the people. So it's really that focus on making everyone in the organization stronger, better, getting their ideas out, helping them implement things. So we really work on high performing organizations, and we try to make sure there's a focus on those people and the processes they're using, and then definitely focus on results as well. Culture of trust. Services, we do mostly project work. So we're going to get involved and focus on specific initiatives. Sometimes it's, the initiative is the entire company, trying to make the entire company better. And we also do some training in Lean Six Sigma. We do a couple trainings a year in a green belt program. So employees who want to, develop their skills into a green belt, we do that. We've done some lean innovation work and leadership development in a fairly new program, My Leadership Journey, that we'll at least mention later. Other family business speakers, we have two here, Peter Horch. And do you want me to intro you, or do you want to say something?
Oh, go ahead.
I figured I'd give him the out. So yeah, Peter has worked with Leany's team for about 4 years now. And, it's just a great family business story of starting it with himself back in 2003 and slowly growing to where at this point, Horch Roofing has 2 locations now, Warren and South Portland. They're doing over 1,000 projects a year, all over the state of Maine. They're known, and Catherine mentioned an award for their recycling efforts. They really recycle 100%. And I think it's a great story of just continued annual growth every year in the business. And at this point, I think it's true, you're the leading residential roofing company in Maine. I don't know. Prove that wrong. Otherwise, I'm calling it right there. So that's Horch Roofing, and that's a picture of most of the team in the Warren location. So I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's right off of Route 90, and it's a great setup there. And then South Portland, what is the address there?
184 Main Street.
184 Main. So yeah, right as you sort of cross from Portland, you're gonna find yourself right there. And there's just getting that started, and construction began Tuesday on really like rehabbing that space and making it into, just a leading space for the residential roofing business. Good enough? Perfect. Lilly Mullen is also here. So I know Peter's with IFOB, Lilly is not, but she's 4th generation at Springer's. And, I'm so happy to have worked with her over the last couple of years. Springer's has, been around for over 150 years, which is just crazy. Again, awesome as a family business. Some of the biggest brands in the business, and I'm not like a jewelry expert or anything, so Lilly can definitely help out if there's things to discuss there. But the Rolex name, you're the only Rolex
in Maine.
in Maine. Yeah. There are locations in Portland and Bath, and who's been to a Springer's? Most of us, right? Yeah, most of us have been to Springer's, right? Portland and Bath and Portsmouth, New Hampshire has a brand new rehabbed location. You guys got to check that out. I just went in a couple weeks ago and it's still in the works, but it is going to be pretty awesome as far as the space. The other thing with Springer's, I mean, continued financial growth, and even after 150 years, you know, when you've been around that long, I mean, last year was the best year in the company's history. And that's really exciting and awesome stuff.
Despite challenges.
Yeah, despite,
Couple bumps in the road.
and I don't know, I mean, both of them went through probably what a lot of you did with COVID, which is like, what do? The world has just changed. We're scared. We don't know what's happening. And it's been pretty crazy to just see, you know, just the response to COVID. And then, you know, you respond, you take action, and then you see the results of good actions and good, you know, certainly good outcomes following. So that's the quick intro. What I'll do is I'll kick this off and I'm just going to talk for a few minutes and then I'm going to lob questions towards Peter and Lilly so they can share on their org. The framework I'll use is something I came up with, which is a little corny, but it's, you know, it's performance. So it uses the letters of the word performance to sort of spell out some steps. And in an organization or especially a small business, you know, these are good things to check off on your list and make sure you're covering. So the P is your purpose. Have a purpose and make sure it's known and understood in the organization. So that's the why you exist. Then make sure you have ethics. You know, make them clear, establish them, the core values. That is, I guess, what we'd call the who you are. So great starting point, you know, with any organization, we're going to come in and just make sure those boxes are checked, you know, have the purpose and the core values there. The third step, we spend a lot of time on, and I don't think a lot of organizations do, or I think a lot of people skip this, but it's really understanding where you are. And what we will typically find when we're working with an organization is there's a lot of disagreement. Some people will think they're good in some areas and other people in the organization will say, we're terrible at this. So really getting that clarity on the reality is super important because the next step is figuring out where you want to be. So formalizing the future, that future step. So it's hard to know where you want to be if you don't have clarity on where you are. Make sense so far? Ownership is the O. So once you know where you want to be, it's about knowing who is going to do what to get you to that future vision. And there's a lot now about the organization itself and going out and getting the restructuring, resolving the conflict, whatever you need to do to make sure the right people in the right seats. Okay. And then the last part of perform, which is where we spend most of our time, are the measures. So measures are, that's the definition of your future. You know, if you want to be somewhere, define the measures that say, hey, we've arrived. You have to define that and clarify that in the organization. Any questions about the basic model here? Anything, you know, you're surprised by, missing? No? You okay? Just waking up? Coffee over there.
Hey, Steve, are you willing to share these slides after the presentation?
Yeah, we've already shared this with IFOB. So yeah, we're gonna put it up a link.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm gonna use this model sort of again as the framework, but we're gonna jump into a couple of areas and lob the questions. So I'm gonna start out with sort of where we spent a lot of time working with both Lilly, Peter, and their teams, and that's the current reality. And a lot of that, I'll just mention real quickly with Lean East, it's a background in lean thinking. So what lean is, it's not about understaffing. It's not, if someone says our organization is lean because they didn't rehire, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about lean, not as an acronym. What we are talking about is a set of tools that you can use to improve, a strategy, which is what I'll share in a second, and also kind of a philosophy about the entire organization. So with lean, everything you do in an organization is hopefully processes that do something valuable for customers. That's the whole idea of what all of us should be doing. Hopefully we have a product or service, something we're doing that customers want, and we're going to deliver that. So the goal in lean is to distinguish what you're doing that's valuable in the customer's eyes versus everything else that isn't valuable. And unfortunately, that's not easy because there are things you do and, why do you do that? Oh, we've always done it that way. Okay, but maybe there was a reason before and there isn't now. So it's really challenging those things. And, the expertise and the people doing the work, providing the value, they know better than anyone, or should know better than anyone, what it is they do and why. So our challenge isn't to work with leaders who say what they think happens, but it's more to work with the people who are actually doing the work and performing that value and helping them examine what they do and figure out ways to make it better. And the tough thing is, we don't decide and leaders don't decide what actually happens. And especially in this day and age, if you haven't noticed, employees do what they want. Our job is, let's, as leaders and in our roles, let's try to convince them to do the right thing so they understand why they're doing it and they want to do the right thing. So it is, again, that mission we have of bringing out the best in people. So customer value, super important. What you're delivering them, what level they want it, what speed they want it to get, what cost. We focus on both the external customer, the end user, but also the internal customer in the process. There's often things you're doing, we get a bank here. So in a loan process, the next step in that loan might be, I've got my approvals. Now it's going to someone to look at it and examine if this can move to the next step. So getting that internal customer involved is important. And just knowing how you're satisfying. So quick, quick work there, but if you can succeed, what you're doing then is eliminating the non-value added time and being left with more time to do what is valuable. So it's getting that system correct. Questions there? I'm going to toss it over to both Peter and Lilly then to talk a little bit about what they have gone through and some of the discoveries they had when they looked at their initial reality a couple of years ago.
One quick question.
Yeah.
On non-value added time, are you actively reaching out to your reports or your employees to find out what they want to share in terms of what they feel might be value added or not value added in terms of, value added time, not necessarily being just through the lens of the leader, but through your participants?
Yes. So the question would be absolutely. I don't know if you guys want to chip in on that, but yeah, it's definitely understanding. And the challenge is always, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know this is a value? And, what are you using to measure it? And let's figure that out and see how you're doing more of it. I think we said we'd start with Lilly on this.
Okay. So part of our journey, just to give you a little background, is it started with an org chart project, we'll say, with Steve, where there was too many direct reports to one person. The bridges of communication were not as clean as they could have been. And that was huge for us to dive into that. And with what he's saying there is, what is our reality? what we did is we brought it all back to client experience and how does it serve the client? We flipped our org chart, client first. And that is a huge, I think, key discovery in this is that almost with every solution, we could bring it back to, or I should say, in looking into what the root cause of the issue was, not the solution, which is huge, is, you know, really diving into what is really the challenge here, not just saying, oh, we should do this. So in that process of diving into the root cause, but then also keeping the customer experience top of mind with the employees, that was the biggest thing, is making them be part of the discussion and involved in it, and their input is so valuable. So that, I think, was the biggest discovery in the beginning of our process, especially to not only involve people, but get everyone thinking about root cause.
Awesome point. So for me, I was born and raised in Maine, and then I call myself this. Some people in the room don't like that much, but I'm just a high school graduate roofer, right? I never went to college. Out of high school, I went to work for a bank for a short amount of time, but then put on a tool belt and got up on a roof. And recognized that I couldn't do that forever, and so I started to grow the business. And there is no roadmap for growing a roofing company in Mid-Coast Maine, right? So what do? You just try things and you continue to go to work. And so for 15 years, I just kept trying things, and the business was growing, and it was great, right? So all of a sudden, though, we were struggling. I was starting to recognize I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I brought Steve on board, and the first thing we did was look at the business. And the process of completing a roof is you call the office, we take down your name, a salesperson then would come and look at your project. We would give you a proposal. You accept the proposal, sign a contract, we send a crew to your house, and we accomplish the work, and then we send you an invoice and you pay the bill. In that process, Steve met with, your question, do you involve the employees, met with every single employee, from admins and salespeople to our crews, and asked, what do you do and how do you do it? We recognized we wrote down a customer's name 17 times through that process. So I'm like, wait a second, how'd this happen? Well, just growing the business, we were just saying, let's make a new file for this. Let's put this in this file cabinet. Let's put another room over here and another person. And we were just growing the business, right? We never really stepped back and looked at, well, how many times we wrote down a customer's name. So when Steve talks about time saved, we grew that year by 45% and never hired a new employee. We were just cutting those processes out that were created that we didn't really realize at this point that were a waste of time. So that was the biggest reality for me. And once I realized this, I was like, goodness, we got to get to work. And so as we start to pull those processes apart, we really leaned down how we got that done, and we were able to grow the business. Obviously, we hired staff to produce the work, but administratively wise, sales and administration wise, we didn't have to hire any more people, and we grew by 45%. So that was the biggest aha moment for me.
Any questions on some of those?
Yeah, Peter, I too feel your pain. So Mark Curtis, Gorham Center Gravel, I never went to college, you know, the whole 9 yards. I recognize some of the same things that you're talking about. I mean, 35-year-old business, we've done, that's exactly, what you described is almost exactly what we do. I don't believe we write the name down 17 times, but I definitely agree there's some things in there that we do more than once. And as you said, why do we do it? Because, well, we've just done it that way. You know what I mean? It works, clearly works. We're still here, we're still doing things, right? So, but how did you get from, okay, we recognize that our process needs to be leaned down. You didn't add staff to lean that down, right? So who was the next step? What was the next step when you said, okay, we got to get rid of this? Did their company come in and figure out the process? Did you hire another consultant to get new software? I mean, what was the?
Well, I mean, I have to give credit where credit's due. Like I said, I just don't, you know, I'm a roofer. That's what I call myself. When people ask me what I do, I'm a roofer. That's what I do. I happen to own a roofing company. And so once you recognize what you don't know, that's the biggest thing. And I really recognized that I was like, I want somebody with some more experience. And so what Steve did was not just identify the 17 times we wrote down the name, but actually drew a process map. So, and then once the basic map was done, there's processes within that. Like sales call comes in and goes into the sales process, great, then it goes to production. Well, those are just 2 boxes. But inside that, there are another 10 boxes of processes. And once you actually write all that down, you recognize, wait a second, I don't have to do it that way. I can remove this box or minimize it. And by including the employees, they then have ownership of it. And that's why it really worked, because now our people are like, you're asking me, you're not telling me what to do. And so it was a much easier transition, but it is a ton of work and it's not cheap. Sorry, see, it's a ton of work, but
You also just grew your business by 45%.
that's what I'm saying, right? The simple math was at the end of the year, there was still profit and more profit because we were leaning things down, so.
Yeah, I would say Lilly had a big nugget there too, which is it isn't about the solution. It's about understanding your problem and taking the time to put it down on paper and have people look at it and realize, oh, like 17 times repeating the name, that's the problem. That's what we can fix. And I mean, that was a big thing Lilly realized is you don't just say, here's what we're going to do. It's like, let's understand what's wrong. And that understanding of what's wrong in the reality, once you understood it, these solutions kind of fall out of it. You're like, oh, well, we should not write the name down 17 times. We should just do it a couple times where we need to. So the solutions came out of that. And I think that's a big step. Go ahead.
Sorry, in the back.
Oh,
So I'm sure like during this process, like there's a lot of different people who are probably involved in that, like 17, writing the name down 17 times or being a part of that org chart. I think like, how did you guys manage like bringing in a consultant and like uncovering all of this stuff that I'm assuming certain people in the organization were like, oh shoot, like I owned that process. Either now I don't, and like, am I gonna be let go? Or like, do I look stupid because we're changing the way that I've been doing things? Like, how did you guys manage that stuff internally with your current staff? And like, did people leave because they were like, this is ridiculous? Like we've had like fighting the how we've always done it type of process when it was gradually becoming more and more apparent that like these changes need to be made.
I think I think giving an example of the process is really helpful is one, when you have a department that we're specifically looking for process improvement, we would create a team. And within that team, I think a huge thing was being very clear about what we're doing here. And it's, we're looking for process improvement. We're not getting anyone in trouble and we want them to be the head of the team. So in several of our projects, I was not part of the team at all. It could be several people from different departments, a couple key people from one department. I think it's important on that team to have people with different levels within the department. And giving somebody ownership and leadership and an extra project outside of what they do was actually the opposite of what you would think. They were really invested in it. And within that team, I think to even answer your question, that for us in particular, we used a template. They'd answer questions. And even answering those questions, it's like, well, what is the problem here? And digging in deeper and deeper, it really got them thinking more about the process themselves and understanding it. And through that process, what I loved is when the reality, someone saying, what's the problem? What really is the problem here? Everybody's reality was very different. So even that process of asking the question, what's the problem? Step one right there, we were already 10 steps ahead because we understood that everybody's reality was a little different and how do we get to the same reality? So, but I think giving them the ownership and the leadership in that had the adverse effect of what you would think.
Can I add a little bit as an employee
Yeah.
to that? So
Katie
I'm-
works at Springer's.
I'm with Springer's Jewelers and I was lucky enough to get to work with Steve a little bit and have been part of the company for 5 years. So really watch this transition that Lilly has been talking about. And I think one key thing that, jumping on that and what also Peter was talking about is when a decision was made, our teams maybe have 25 people and there were 3 representatives in the team, is they didn't say, listen, guys, we talked it all out. This is what we're doing. They then would share the docs of how they got there, the process plans, and make it really transparent so everybody else could be like, okay, you did look at all those things, and convincing, getting that belief from the whole team, I think helped everybody really come together with those changes that you could probably feel some resistance to.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask how you made everybody feel comfortable through all this process, but But in your two cases, how long was this discovery process?
Still happening.
time?
It never ends. I think that's, and it depends on the scale of the project.
Well, since we started working with Steve, we've doubled the size of the company. So that's, I mean, you're just always working at the new processes, right? But to kind of answer both your questions, the involvement of the employee is key. We had a sales process where we had enough salespeople that at least one of them was in the office to take the new calls. They would get distributed to everybody. Then the rest of the week, they would spend the week on the road selling their jobs that they got assigned, right? So they were frustrated with the fact that they had to sit in the office. They need to be out selling. And I didn't feel as though there was enough reason to hire a full-time employee just to sit in an office. And so I asked them to do the analysis. How much more could you sell if we hired X amount of dollar employee? And they did the work with Steve and then gave me a proposal that said, please, this is gonna work, hire a person. And so we did, and their sales increased by almost exactly what they proposed. So, and they were all really excited to be part of the process and understand why we were hiring somebody. So involving your employees is absolute key.
Well, I think a takeaway from that too is that there's so much of your time too that goes into promoting buy-in and doing the work and doing the analysis, and that takes those responsibilities off your plate as well, while adding transparency to your company and, you know, camaraderie. So that is also a side effect of it that you know, isn't, it's the intent, but it's a huge side effect that isn't always, you know, factored in.
Things go better when people are bought in on what I do. And one thing, I'll just add real quick, one thing Peter humbly sort of mentioned is he's just tried things and see if, you know, seeing if they worked. That's all we kind of promote anyway. Just have a plan, you know what's your reality, set up your vision. Hey, we think if we do this, it will make it better, and then try it. So he's been doing that for, 20 years anyway. So we just tried to put a little bit more formality on it and toss it to the employees and say, hey, employees, you try stuff out, or, you make the proposal. So it's the same kind of stuff. Cool, let's jump into a couple other areas. I'm gonna go, whoops, wrong direction. I'm gonna go really fast on this next one. Just back to this model that we just talked about. Then, the next thing I'll talk about is some of that restructuring. And I'm gonna go back to, as I sort of pitched an idea, what could we do for IFOB? What cool thing that happened is I thought back to a session we had in 2019. And it was really funny. It was Peter and Lilly and Doug Packard, who's here, and myself. We got together, and here I am. I'm working with Peter and Horch Roofing. I'm working with Lilly and Springer's, and they were both almost at the same point, two totally different organizations, but really dealing with the same organizational, structure questions. So we got together from a 9 to noon, and this was sometime in August. And I remember we met at the Cumberland Club.
Don't forget it.
Yeah, it was really cool. And we literally went and reviewed Horch Roofing. We went and reviewed Springer's, and then we talked about org structure. And I felt like, it was great because Peter would ask the hard questions to Lilly. Lilly would ask the hard questions to Peter. And we ended up, I think, with a pretty good plan coming out of that. So like here we are 3 years later, and I thought about this panel. I was like, well, we got the same people. We can just bring the dream team back together right there. So Peter and Lilly. Again, you wouldn't necessarily think of it, right? We have a high-end jewelry, right? The highest end, the biggest brands in the state. And then we've got a residential roofing company. And almost the exact same sort of, issues, struggles, and needs. So it was just a really cool combined session we did together. The biggest thing, I'll just share real quick before I turn over to them. The biggest thing that came out of it is the realization that sort of structure follows strategy. So figure out, have that vision in place. What do we want to be? How do we want to grow? How will we set up? And then have your structure as how you build the organization and the roles sort of align with and make sense for that strategy. So a couple of things are here. I won't read them all. but clearly having the ability for defined roles, responsibilities, accountability, and the biggest thing is probably communication flow. And in the case, I think, of both these organizations, you had strong leaders who were realizing that as they grew, that, oh my word, everything can't go through leadership anymore. And the company was growing because these leaders were making great decisions. But it got to the point, I think I'd say, where in both companies' cases, too much had to flow through the leader, and growth started to slow because it couldn't all fit in, too much for Lilly, too much for Peter to do. So that was where they had to sort of get into a organization. So my question, tossing it over to them, is, can you summarize, maybe starting with Peter, what did you do and what were some of the biggest benefits?
I was trying to think of what we talked about the other day and I totally forgot. So, and when I think about this question, there's so many things that we did. Like Steve said, I realized when I started working with him, somebody came to me and said, "Can I get a new cell phone?" I'm like, I'm running a multi-million-dollar business and I'm having an employee ask me if they can get a new cell phone. Well, wait a second, it's bottlenecking. We're not able to grow because my skill is to look at the vision of the business, not to have somebody ask me for a cell phone. And so what we did was we started to try things because, like I mentioned earlier, there is no right answer. And that's really hard because as leaders, we want to have that feeling like we got it right. And so I want to make the right decision. Which one is the right decision? Well, there is no right decision. You have to try something. And in hindsight, can you only recognize that was a good move? And so we started to try different leadership job descriptions. So we had vice president of sales and vice president of production. We recognized that that wasn't the right butts and seats, right? We've heard that statement. This person was not necessarily doing what we thought they were supposed to. And so we had to rewrite a job description to a COO and a sales and marketing business development person. So we've been doing these changes. The benefit is that we continue to grow. And so even though some people were not right for a position, we just moved them. It wasn't that we're trying to, in the lean process, we're never trying to get rid of people. We're trying to get their skill set to be used best in the business. And so working with Michelle, because again, my idea of a job description is do better, right? More shingles, right? That's my idea of a job description. It doesn't work. And so working with Michelle, she's like, well, what does do better mean? I'm like, so, and then she would draft these changes to either high level leadership in the company or even mid-level management down to entry level to help us better manage our people. And we have, and then my last comment about the benefits, the benefit is that it's always changing. That's the other really hard thing to get your head wrapped around. I want to finish a project. When I was a roofer, I would roof the building. I'd look back and I'm like, I finished the project. I can walk away. I feel good, right? And when working with org charts and job descriptions, I just did this 6 months ago. Why am I doing it again? It doesn't work and we have to redo this, or it's growing, or we had something change. So that's really a hard thing to get your head wrapped around, but you have to keep working on it.
What would you add?
I would add that, we had a very similar situation. We have bridges of communication through all employees that were basically, I was that bridge. I was the person that every decision had to come through me between departments. So we, through our org chart changes, we created department heads and all the communication flowed between them to the departments and then up to me. And it was a huge change. And it not only, affected my ability to work on our mission statement, work on our strategy, work on our growth plan, but it also really improved the communication between the rest of the company where I was no longer the middleman. And I think the adverse effect or the positive effect of that was that it all really empowered people, that they didn't have to come to me with a decision. And that is where the job description is really crucial about where does that decision lie, who is actually going to make that end call on that, and then really removing myself from even being able to be involved in those discussions. I think that was huge for me. If there's a meeting with this team, I am strategically not going to attend because I am only going to slow down their progress. And I think another takeaway was that, we're comfortable making mistakes because we do it all the time and it's our company. And just having that trust in those people to own those job descriptions and make those mistakes, and they're going to be much less comfortable making a mistake than we are. And I think that was a huge, I mean, I already understood that about our team. We have a great team, but it was a huge benefit for me that I could be removed from that and also empower people at the same time.
Yes.
When you did like step away from certain things or strategically not be involved, was there certain areas where you wanted to be a little more involved and certain ones where you wanted to make sure you?
Yeah, there's definitely, and that's actually a part of work that, you know, I've done with Doug, who's here, is, you know, what in the company do you want to be doing and what should you be doing? And there are definitely things that I have no interest in doing. And it was, you know, removing myself from that. But then what the challenging thing was the parts that I want to be part of the conversation, and how to take yourself away from those meetings and those projects. And I think that that'll lead into, you know, another topic we have on dashboards and how you're able to remove yourself from that and kind of have that peace of mind, not to lead into that.
Joe, I would say, you know, we've all heard the term give yourself permission. And I worked with Doug Packard, a coach for a little bit, and Steve. And what I did is look at what I liked to do. And that's okay. You know, build your structure around what you actually enjoy doing. It's not being selfish. If you don't like a part of the business, then find someone to manage that for you and let them do that. And once I realized that, you know, there were definitely parts of the business that I didn't like, and I actually do like the money side of things, which is funny, right? But that's what I really like to watch. I like to be involved in that. I want to, well, and I also want to know whether or not we're making money. So that's the part of that I kept. But the rest of it, the sales and production side, I'm really tired. You know, I managed those teams for a long time. And I said, that's okay to put people in charge and let them run that side of the business.
But I think the takeaway from that also is you're not the part of redoing your org chart, right seats on the bus. This process of defining what you want to do and how you bring value to the company, it's not just limited to you. That is a process that you go through with every single person in your company. What do you like doing? What do you not like doing? So it really is not just an ownership type of conversation. It's a conversation you should be having with everybody, because then you get the right seats on the bus.
I just was wondering if you could both talk a little bit about goal setting. I know, Lilly, you probably obviously want to sell more Rolexes and diamond rings and you want more shingles. But are there, within this process, do your individual teams have goals that they set for themselves? And how does that work?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because I think that really gets to the heart of lean and process improvement, where, you know, we are working on updating our dashboard right now. And it's still there because we need to look at financials, but I said, I do not need to see the sales, or the sales are not the measurement in the goals that we're trying to reach. What we need to be tracking is those 10 steps that need to happen to make the sales happen. The sales are an effect of the steps that need to happen to make the sales happen. So that's been the great part of this process, and having the org chart serve the goal, and that all is represented within the dashboard. That, yeah, the goal is sales, it always is, but what we're measuring and what the teams, whether it's sales or non-sales, their goals and what they're trying to hit are not numbers. They are the steps that take to get to the numbers.
I can segue. The next part is about some of that. If you want me to cruise to that, I'll just, let me just close on the org chart. I want to share that even though these two got together and had a joint session, the results were completely different. They didn't walk out with the same organizational structure. They walked out with completely different structures. And in both cases, everyone's been an internal person, right? Both your leader, the lead teams are all internal. So it wasn't going out and finding external people. Although Horch Roofing is looking for a CFO, and if anyone is interested. But it wasn't about going and finding external people. It was really about utilizing and better utilizing the internal people. So they've done all their successes had been from internal teams. So going back to this question, the measures of success, I wanted to cover that really quickly and just share exactly a couple of things on goal setting. You know, we did get into how to set goals, and we wanted to set better goals. And you guys probably have seen this SMART acronym, but it's a good one. Just, specific, measurable, action oriented, so on. The other thing we did, and Springer's really took this and did a great job with it, is they made sure to separate between individual or team goals. And at Springer's, Lilly has called them foundation goals. These are the goals, we need to achieve in order for the business to be viable and to be, decent.
Pay the bills.
Pay the bills. Then there's stretch goals, which are what we really want. And some of those stretch goals, for Lily's team ends up being, individual goals. Peter's done the same thing. And, I've shared this story a bunch of times with other clients, how someone on Peter's team in sales set their own stretch goal and we all laughed at it. I won't get into what the amount was, but we were like, yeah, that's like, $500,000 more than anyone's ever done in the company. And then last year, the employee went and crushed it, beat it by almost like $500,000. So, it is okay to challenge yourself as an individual and dream big and have some big goals. So in your organization though, separate the two. Make sure you know which are the, this is what we're setting our budgets on. And this is what we really are dreaming about, because you don't want to set your budgets on the stretch goals and then hold people accountable to a dream. But you do need to meet the minimums. So hopefully that helps on goal setting. We took a lot of this goal setting and we talked about outcomes. So the analogy I always use is you step on the scale, if you have a goal around weight, there is an outcome and it is the scale. But you don't do much with that particular goal. There's not much of an action other than stepping and checking on it. It's the same thing with your financial results. They just happen. They're there at the end. What you want to focus on is measuring the process objectives, the things you're going to do. So in this example, if you care about what you weigh, set process objectives and look at what you eat. Look at how many steps you take. Look at how many times you exercise. Measure and set goals around those areas. And we're calling those key performance indicators, KPIs for short. So make sure they're key or important goals, important measures of success. Usually you want them to be based something, again, going back to customer value, something customers care about that matters to the customers. And an indicator is usually that process objective. So it's an indicator of success. So if you meet that indicator, and the example again of weight is if I exercise 3 times a week and I don't eat 10 desserts a week, that's usually an indicator that I'm gonna meet my weight goal, as an example. With these goals, make sure you have balance. And what we've done is created simple dashboards. And once again, completely different between Springer's, between Horch Roofing. It's really the dashboard is what works for the team and what meets their goals and what their process objectives are. But we suggest some balance. So don't be focused too much in just one area or one, for example, productivity metric. Add in some quality, add in some service, add in some improvement and growth metrics so that you have not just all the focus in one area, but the balanced perspective and the ability to look more holistically at a dashboard and say, hey, the team's doing well in all these areas is what we want. So why don't you guys talk a little, just how the dashboard and a regular review of it has benefited your company.
For me, what Steve talked about with process and outcome, our job not primarily, it is 90% of it is a 412 or more, which is the pitch of a roof, which from the National Roofing Contract Association is considered steep slope. This is a flat roof, right? So as you can imagine, the danger level on standing on a pitch surface versus standing on a flat surface, it increases. So as you well could imagine, our number one goal is safety. We can't have people getting hurt and falling off a roof. So how do you get more safe? Well, if OSHA says you have to hook up to a harness that's attached to an anchor point and you have to climb up down the ladder a certain way, how do you get more safe? This is the problem we had was we want to be more safer. We want to be better, like go harder. It's like, what do you do? And so the process was that we were going to have inspections. And so we would assign job sites to certain people and they would go and do inspections. And we also had a new process that we put in place, which is called the job hazard analysis, which meant that every day over the hood of a truck, our team gets together and goes over the hazards of the job, which, as you could be well aware, is tedious when the hazards are the same thing every day. But by meeting every single day and talking about it every day and then having someone show up at a job site and check to make sure everybody's doing it, the outcome was that we were more safe. Our accidents went down. We recognized what the accidents were, the consistency, and they happened to be cuts, not falls or major injuries. We used knives on jobs every day. And so we were cutting ourselves. And we also work with steel. Metal roofing is sharp when you cut it, right? And so we're like, oh, we're going to implement a new policy that everybody wears a cut gloves, they're called. So you can't get cut. Our mimic claims went to zero instantly. So the process of inspecting safety, when we implemented those changes, the outcome was we are actually more safe as a company. And so by looking at a dashboard and not just saying to somebody, fill this out every day, what triggers it in an employee's mind is, I want to try and be more safe. And how do I measure that? It's if I do this. And so in a dashboard, if you link those categories, we have categories, safety and quality, customer service, employee happiness, all those type of things. And so when you have both of those on the dashboard, then your employees understand why they're doing the work they're doing. And so the regular review of the dashboard shows us green, just like a regular green, yellow, and red, which is, are we doing really good? Are we okay? Or are we not doing well? And our employees can identify really quickly how successful they're being by looking at a dashboard.
Do you have a position for safety, Peter, or did you create one, or do you have a designated job captain or somebody per job? In other words, do you have like a company-wide? How did you handle that? Because that's interesting. It's a nice result.
And that goes back to the org chart. We actually have a job description written and ready to go for a safety and training specialist full-time. It's hard to either hire someone into our culture from outside or figure out how to promote someone to that position, because now you're pulling usually someone from production. We're trying to produce work and we have a labor crisis. I don't know if you knew that. It's now I can't remember what your question was.
You want to have
Do you
one.
have a position?
Oh, yes, I want to have one. So no, what happened was,
Company-wide or
what happened was we had to identify people that could integrate that into their roles. So instead of saying we don't have one, we're going to let it go, we said we have to have other people in the company fill that role and distribute that role until we can find somebody to fill it.
Safety is everyone's job though too. So, but having a resource or someone who can train or show the right way is definitely good. But like, Peter said, it's hard to not have production when you have production needs. Like, I want you to train, but can you do this today?
But that's also the beauty of the org chart and the dashboard, is that Peter, as the leader, made a goal for the company. And that needs to trickle down to, these are the job descriptions that need to make it happen, spread amongst the org chart at this point. And then how is that represented on the dashboard? So he knows it's actually happening. And that's the beauty of the connection between the dashboard and the org chart.
So along those lines, the org chart dashboard, I mean, obviously I understand what a dashboard is. You seem to be referring to the exact same thing. So is there a software or something that you're using for this dashboard, or is it just a report, or is it just because you worked with Steve, you're using the same terminology?
No, it's as simple as what we have, and it's probably similar, is that so there's the main dashboard that I view on a regular basis, but below that is sub dashboards, and that's where we've determined the KPIs between the departments, and they fill that data into an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay.
So it's a list of what their department goals are, and then that automates and it will funnel up to my dashboard where I just see red, green, or yellow, and if it's red or yellow, they come with explaining why it's red or yellow, and that answers my question of how it's benefited the company. Me, it's benefited personally because it's feeling that control and that peace of mind without actually having to be in the weeds and the data all the time. But it also has given a ton of transparency and accountability to my team, because we have made it very clear, or I have made it very clear what the goal is, what the KPIs represent that we've met the goal, and then they are ready to come to a meeting with why has it not been met, why has it been met, and it really, the communication has been streamlined greatly.
Have either of you run into any issue with somebody pencil whipping that to make sure that they stay green and don't get to talking?
It's really hard when you can look at, when you yourself can find the correct answer, then it's hard to do. And they know that,
Right, okay.
so it's hard to.
And I think that goes back to them being part of the project of root cause, what's the solution? Because really, if they're part of that solution, they know it's gonna make their job better, they know it's gonna make, and if something's not going well, if something's not going well or represented well in the dashboard, it's gonna come out at those sales numbers at the end of the day. And we're gonna dive back, well, why are these sales down? Well, you were right here, or, you're gonna be able to figure it out. The beauty is we don't have to do all that work.
I just have a question for you, Peter, because you have frontline employees who are doing general labor jobs. It's obvious to the company that safety is important, and not only people aren't getting hurt and being out of work, but also the bottom line of your company. So how did you get that? You're looking at the dashboard, but when you've got roofers on a roof, how are you getting them to care about the same safety metrics? Like, how are you getting them to wear their safety harnesses? You can't be micromanaging them. So did you have to shift the culture? Was there a, tell me about that process of getting them to care.
The culture shift happened a long time ago where I actually never wore a harness. Only when I realized that I had to ask someone else to go up on a roof and I would be responsible for them, did that freak me out? I'm like, I can't have that on my conscience, so you have to wear a harness. And so that was tough because a lot of guys had never worn one and some people quit, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
That had been in the company for quite a while, but to actually get them to do it is the hard part. And when you hire a new employee, you start out with safety and you spend days on it. OSHA 10-hour, you get trained on how to hook up the right way, all this kind of stuff. And then you get put into a crew with a foreman who is having that same message. The foreman is managed by a superintendent who has the same message. The superintendent's managed by the COO who reports to me, you know what I'm saying? It just is, as long as you have everybody in the company embracing a concept, then it should work out. And when you do that, people who don't embrace it with you take themselves out so fast. It's so easy to manage bad employees. I shouldn't say that. It is easier to manage bad employees when you expect something and they don't do it. It's just, it's a lot easier on you.
A question from someone on Zoom. How do you handle introducing a leadership role successfully into a company to cover an identified need if you have staff that are resistant to a new leader?
I think part of it is, Katie spoke to this, is if you go through the correct processes of identifying the root cause and the analysis you've done in the background, to say that they can see the reasons why you came to that. And then, kind of like the oldest trick in the book, how does it benefit them? I think that's the most important thing when you're introducing anything new to anybody in the company, is you need to make sure that you are identifying directly to them, how does it benefit them personally? And that will get you some instant buy-in, hopefully.
For me, I have a vision to Roof America, which is a really big goal. But I realized my personality, when I set smaller goals and hit them, I got really bored. So I'm gonna set this goal that I'm gonna work at, and I'm gonna really try and get to. My team knows that. And so when we look at an organization and an organizational chart and a large corporation, it's structured different than the size of the business I have. And so we've been messaging to our employees that we're going to hire a CFO. At some point, we need to, none of us in this company right now have the background and the knowledge to be a CFO of a roofing company. And so we are going to hire one. I've been saying that for years. Even though we didn't need one, I know what we're gonna need in the future. And I know what we're gonna, you just try and forecast. If you plant that seed in the employee's mind, then when the time comes to actually bring that person in, my financial coordinator right now is not surprised that I'm interviewing for a CFO, and she knows that she's going to have to report to somebody different by the end of the year. And so this is, does she want to not report to me? Probably not. She likes, right, working with the guy who calls the shots. But it's that she knows that change is happening. So I think by making sure that you have a clear vision and it's transparent to your employees, that's an easier process.
I will add also, and you may noted this already, Lily, whenever there's going to be a change, it is always about what's in it for me. Nobody makes a change unless there's a benefit to them personally. So giving people that vision of where you're going, how I fit into it, and what's the benefit for me is so key to bringing any new position into your organization.
In your experience, have you set aggressive KPIs that you felt might have been impeding on your company? And if so, how did you deal with best practices of how to prevent that?
I think if you're going through the process of I'm establishing the goal and the vision, and the expectation is that others figure out how to get there, they're going to set goals that they feel are obtainable for themselves. I might push back on those and challenge those a little bit, but it's a group discussion beyond what's reality and what are the goals really are what are the steps that they have to take to make my vision happen. So if I step away from that and let them own that, then we actually had I think a couple people here with that. There was a goal that I set that did not get met. And we had to go back to the drawing board and I wasn't happy about it, but it went back to the root cause. Why did the goal not get met? How do we rework this process? Why was it not happening? Not just that I was mad that it didn't happen. And involving the group in that, really, we came up to a conclusion. And that's really why our dashboard is ever evolving. You know, and having that data, you can figure out like, well, why didn't this happen? It's not just a yes or no. And then we did change the goal because of that, because it wasn't working the way it was. That answers the question.
Just a follow up to that, Lily, knowing next to nothing about the jewelry business, admittedly, could you give an example from your business of what a goal was for Springers?
Yeah,
That was met perhaps, or
yeah, so I wanted to increase market share in bridal, and I needed a new product to make that happen. And I had outlined the product that I felt was going to make this happen, and we were all in agreement with it as a group. And the completion of the product being brought to market was being delayed. And it went back to getting to the root cause. Why is this being delayed? Where are the bottlenecks? Is it us? Is it vendors? And then from there, I wanted to get the product to market. So we did alter the product to make it happen more quickly, take a piece out of it. And that was how, like, a KPI that didn't get met, I said, okay, I still want to bring this to market. So what do we need to change about this product to get it to market? Which would then all lead back to sales. You know, if we're increasing market share, it's going to hit that sales goal, but that's not really the focus. It's the steps to get there.
Awesome. I'm gonna get to our last little section here, just from timing. So we've used this model on high-performing organizations. There's a couple of other pieces. You know, we sort of went through perform. Once you've successfully got those measures, you can clarify your accountability. So making sure it's clear, and the dashboard usually makes it easy. You know, whoever's responsible for tracking that outcome is usually the one responsible and, you know, the one who impacts it. So that helps with accountability. The other three, inspiring and improvement, communicating and empowering, this is really around leadership. And I'll turn it over to Michelle here, who's really a leadership expert, to talk a little bit about that work, what it takes to lead.
All right, so you've heard a lot of leadership coming out just from the passion of these two individuals over here already. And that, I'm going to say, is a real core of anybody being effective as a leader. You've got to have the energy and the passion and belief in what you're doing. Your visions are all going to come from that. So what you have up here is just a list of some things that come up every time you say, what are the top characteristics of a leader? And we would have loved to have been able to do an exercise and ask you what you thought they were, but instead what we're going to do is just kind of come through these. And then when I'm done going through these, I'm going to ask you to just jot down what are the 5 that are the most important to you. What do you see as very important to be a leader? So you've heard all the way through this, the importance of communications, right? So far, you've been hearing how important it is to engage with your employees. So effective communications, what kind of messages are you giving out to your employees? And it comes about in transparency as well. How clear are you at setting expectations? Active listening. If I have to say there is one thing that a leader can completely lose all credibility with, is if they are not a listener. If they are not hearing what's going on in their industry, with their employees, with their team. Empathy, that's all about how do I connect with my employees? Do I show them that I care about them, I'm willing to help, and I can be trusted? Confidence, and Steve and I have talked about that. There's always a fine line, right? Confidence. You want to espouse confidence because people want to follow people who really know and care about what they're doing, but they also want to know that they are going to make a difference. There's that fine line between confidence and arrogance, right? So courage. Courage is about me being able to make the tough decisions, but it's also about being vulnerable enough to ask for feedback and help, especially from the people in your organization. Because they are, as Peter and Lilly have shown you already, so key and essential to being successful. Vision and inspiration. Your leaders are going to set that. Again, back to that energy. You have to have that energy and that passion to make a difference. So you're inspiring. You are not necessarily the person up there shaking and pom-poms and what have you, cheerleading. You are demonstrating what your vision is and how important it is and how each employee in your organization contributes to that. Transparency, we've heard a lot about that today already. Learning mindset. A leader has to be continuously learning. And you heard that right from Peter at the beginning. Try stuff, do things. As a leader, you're going to make mistakes. And I actually shared this with Katie earlier. My father told me something, and I thought it was really kind of weird when he told me this. I was expecting my son, and he said, I'm just going to tell you up front, if you treat all your kids the same, somebody's getting screwed. And I just kind of looked at him, what am I supposed to do with that? And then I recognized as we talk further, it's about, you have to be consistent, but everybody is different. So everybody has different needs. So you've got to have that learning mindset and be willing to try different things with different people. And that goes with delegation. These two have just told you how they had to give up the things that they were doing and been doing so long. That's one of the crutches that most leaders have, is they feel like if they let it go, it's not going to work. And that's about having trust in the people that you trust. And humility, you're seeing that in spades, just listening to their stories. You can see how important that is. And the last one, of course, trustworthiness. So take a second just right now and just jot down what are the top 5 for you. Just take a second.
Yeah, number 1.
Yeah. I'm not going to make you share those. Those are for you. What I want to share here is, this is an interesting look at things from the Gallup poll. This is what followers want from their leaders. This is what your followers want. So trust, we saw a few of those things, right? It's about clear communications, it's about humility, it's about Transparency. It's about knowing that you've got my back. Compassion, again, that empathy, that willingness to help me out. Stability, a little bit of that confidence factor, right? A little bit of do you know where you want to go? What's the vision? Where do we need to go? And hope. It's about showing the future and having the chutzpah to help out in difficult times, right? But this is what followers are looking for. I want to underscore that with, there's a book that I read, I worked in a shipyard, so the book was called Turn the Ship Around. It's by David Marquet. And he took the worst submarine in the naval fleet and made it the best. And he did that by turning upside down and throwing away the leadership model that he was given when he went through Annapolis, which was the higher up you get, the more stripes you have, the more important you are, you make all the decisions. And he went to a sub that he wasn't prepared for. And he asked them to do something that couldn't be done because he didn't know the ship. That's when he recognized they were following orders and they kept trying to do things, and he recognized that it's not about who I am and making decisions. It's about enabling everybody else. So his whole mantra is about making more leaders. And that is what I hear from both of you. You're making more leaders in your teams. That's what good leaders do. They make more leaders, giving people and empowering them with the ability to make decisions, making the right decisions. The closer they are to the work, the more they know it, the more they can analyze, the more they can give you what you need as an organization. So I bring that up. So I want to share here this index came out this year, and there are 5 skills, people management report. At the end of 2021, they did this report. And it shows what are the 5 skills employees value from their managers. They asked a lot of people to pick from a big, long laundry list of things that managers and leaders do. And these are what came out on top. So do you see any similarities so far from what you've been hearing already in this room? Confidence, effective communications, honesty, ability to delegate tasks, and ask for feedback. So if we look at that, this is what in 2021, employees were saying they valued from their leaders. Now, a whole lot changed in 2021, right? So this is what they said they lacked when they're looking at their current manager. Effective communications, driving team morale, providing feedback, ability to delegate tasks, and confidence. Now, I'm also going to say that the report showed that in 2020, the number 1 issue was not communication, it was building teams. What happened? COVID. So the focus changed. The way we work has changed. People are not all in the same space. So now it's about driving team morale when you have people in office, out of office, not seeing each other for months or longer. What are some of the things the leader is going to need to do? So thinking about that, communications jumped up. So there needs to be more clarity around communication, which means what to your employees? Back to my father's comment. You've got to modify. You really need to modify. You need to look at yourself. So looking back at the 5 things that you listed, just take a look, think about, is there something up here that says leaders and managers are lacking? that you put as your top 5? Is there one of those that you want to focus on? Be thinking about how can I bring stronger leadership to my organization, and how can I empower more people to be leaders of themselves as well. So we have a program, and I'll just touch on it briefly, which Doug, Steve, and I have been doing for a couple of years now. Peter was actually our guinea pig on this program.
Oh, really? Wow.
And we took this model, and we really started with leading from the inside out. So really, a leader needs to be, as we put up there, a continuous learner. So they got to look at themselves first. And in our program, we start with self, and some of you have probably done DISC profiles or Myers-Briggs or any of a number of different things. But it's first getting a personal look at, what are my strengths? What are some of my liabilities? What are some of the things I need to look at? We go into that so that we can have a better understanding of how am I influencing and impacting others? Because it's not necessarily what we say or do or our intent, it's the impact that's more important, right? And then we move down around the circle here in terms of engaging with others. It's about the people that we're going to lead, and it's about powerful listening and collaborative communication. And then we focus on how do you lead teams? So facilitating groups, managing conflict, resolving it, and your coaching and development. What are the things you're doing as a leader? If you're a continuous learner and you're modeling that behavior and you're helping your team grow, as you're hearing from both Lilly and Peter, you're going to generate results, right? So
Just to add to that, so when we did our org chart change, we added another layer of management, and with that came, these people were already considered leaders in the company, but the job expectation became to be the leaders, and we put them through this program because you can move people around, but you cannot assume that they have all those tools naturally to be a leader when you've been doing this for years. So I think that's a key part in getting those right seats on the bus, making sure you're giving them the tools to complete the job, even when it comes to personality traits and stuff like this that can't really be represented in a job description.
absolutely, absolutely. So what's actually part of all of this and a part of every leader's role is change. And you just heard that in spades. How incredibly important managing change and leading your teams through change, empowering them and demonstrating hope for them is really key to that. So I bring that to your attention just because it's really important to think about everything you do. You've got to look at how is this going to impact other people, because again, people don't change unless there's something in it for them. So our leadership question for the two of you are, which leadership characteristics has had the biggest impact on your leadership journey and why? Peterson. It's Peterson.
Okay. So for me, I think that it is that trust, delegate, and train concept. And it's like one of those circles that if you can't do all of them at the same time, then it's going to fall apart. If you just focus on training somebody and they're highly skilled, but you don't delegate the role and trust them, then they're going to be really frustrated. If you delegate to somebody, they're not trained, and you don't trust them, they're going to be frustrated. If you trust them, but they don't know what they're doing and they don't know if they have the role, they're going to be frustrated. So the three things that I look at when I'm trying to put somebody in a new role is train that. Are they being trained? Or have I really delegated the role to them? And do I trust that I can turn my back and understand they might fail, and that's okay. And that's one of the things that I think that I've learned the most is to just let go and to say, I have to do a little bit of all three of those things. I got to just let it go, trust somebody's going to be okay, but make sure that I am working with them still and continuously training them. So that's what I worked on.
And I would say that mine has been also the letting go in the way of not allowing myself to be part of specific meetings, almost all meetings actually. And actually Katie and I had an instance, I think it was you, I was on the sales board and something was happening. And I said something like, sometimes the hardest thing is just not to say anything and just observe and let it, and that has been a huge learning for me, because in 5 minutes, it's not that important to me anymore. And that just really letting go. And my letting go was not a lack of trust. It was more of a lack of maybe perception that people thought I wasn't working as hard. And because I already did have a lot of trust, but so it was a lot of internal changes, but yeah, just removing myself from the room really was huge for everybody.
Significant point to recognize is letting go isn't just about, do I believe they can do it? It's about enabling others to develop. And so when you are a leader who cares about your future and your organization's future, you care about the people within it. It's that empathy piece again. And it's courage, right? It takes courage to let go.
Any final Q&A? How much time do we have?
4
Catherine?
minutes. 4 minutes. I'm like, hello.
Make it a quick one.
Yeah, just one more thing. Steve mentioned it earlier. This is a way for us to network. I am searching for a CFO. So it's a remote position.
He needs to roof America. He needs to
And also, there is a box of Horch roofing bags, grocery bags at the door. So if you are heading out, when you head out, if you want to grab one, you're more than welcome to.
So, thank you all. But so
Chapsticks.
we have chapstick, door prizes, and surveys. But first, I'd like to say thank you so much for you guys. And we asked for door prizes and they came out in spades. So we have lots of fabulous ones. So did everybody get a chance to put a business card or a name tag if you didn't have one in here? You didn't? Okay, quick. We gotta get that. That is a good one. Wow. So part of the bribe though is that we need you to fill out your survey. So wow, because that's how we came to this program today, because people were looking for leadership and growth and things. So if you could please complete your survey. We have pens there if anybody needs them. If you're online, please complete the survey for us. Sorry, you can't have a door prize.
I just have a comment for Peter and Lilly. I just want to congratulate you on doing the hard work of improving your organization the way you did, and admitting that you need help and bringing in inside help or outside help to improve your processes. I think it's amazing. Not everybody does that, and obviously success is showing on you. So congratulations. And congratulations, Steve and Michelle. It's a huge undertaking. You guys have done great work. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
Just a question for Steve. I guess it's kind of a broad question, but what would be an example of maybe the greatest organizational success that you're able to contribute to with your consulting business, just in terms of a company or a particular project?
I mean, an example of success, I'd say right here, both, yeah.
Springers and Horch.
Yeah, and it is, I mean, I said it at the beginning, but the mission really is bringing out the best in the people. And it's really, really fun to work with people, and especially people, not necessarily the leaders, but the people in the organization who do sort of get it and realize like, oh yeah, this is like what leadership is. And just to see people grow is, I mean, that, for me, that's the coolest, best part of it. Just seeing those individual changes and improvements and all the leadership confidence and everything you see there. What would you add, Michelle?
I would actually say the same thing in terms of, that's always been, light bulbs going off has always been my little piece. I started to be a school teacher, ended up training trainers in a nuclear power plant, and then went on from there and looking at organizational development. Every time I see somebody go, when they get something and they take it and they apply it, it just gives you so much satisfaction, whether it's a frontline employee or a leader.
And I'm still learning, like continually.
Absolutely.
Okay,
You know,
Lily, we're gonna let you.
Figure out
Okay.
better ways to
Do
do
the honors.
things, and different techniques and things. that
Oh,
work.
Lindsay.
Lindsay, you get the Muscoma bag here. Next one.
Is that a Rolex?
Christina Prescott.
All right.
I should have put a card in.
I'll get you one, Steve. And Chris from Seacoast Management Company.
Chris
All right.
There we go. Mingle a little bit if you like, no worries. Thank you so much again for
Thanks,
coming.
And thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. We'll
There's something in the bag, Chris, too. Don't worry.
I don't, but I think. Well-rounded background, working on a law firm, warehouses.